7 Days in Paradise Part 2. Chapter 3, The Clash of Egos. Dawn slipped in the way it does on islands, quietly, like a secret arriving early. The rain had tired itself out some time after midnight, leaving behind a world rinsed to a shine. The ocean breathed in long, even pulls, the palms shook off the last beads of water, the horizon wore a thin, hopeful pink. Claire woke to the sound of something soft and repetitive, hiss, hush, hiss, then realized it wasn't the ocean. It was coffee. Somewhere in the bungalow, a machine sighed to itself like it was pleased with its own productivity. She sat up, blinked at the room that, for one more day, was half hers, half his. The sliding doors were cracked open. Cool air brushed her skin. On the deck, a surfboard leaned against the rail, beaded with droplets, as if it had come home late and hadn't bothered to dry off. She checked her watch. 5:28 a.m. Right on schedule. The kitchen alcove held a note stuck to the espresso machine with a magnet shaped like a pineapple, took the dawn set. Back soon. Under it, a lopsided smiley face, as if he were winking on paper. She rolled her eyes before she could stop herself, then made the coffee anyway. The first sip was a small ceremony. Heat, bitterness, the hint of chocolate from whatever fancy beans the resort used. Predictable in the best way. Good. She needed predictable. By 6 o'clock, she had her headset on, laptop open, and her day mapped into neat blocks: venue walkthrough, backup tent contingency, sweetheart table placement, verification of the dessert bar's power needs. Her spreadsheet was a cathedral of cells, every name, every time slot, every moving piece accounted for. She slipped into her rhythm, emails sent, calls placed, confirmations logged. The world might be humid and lush and temptingly off-duty outside, but inside her rectangles and rows everything moved in straight lines. The door slid open on a swell of morning air. Max padded in barefoot, sea water darkening his hair, board under one arm, skin stamped with the kind of golden you can't buy. He carried the ocean with him, salt, sun, a whisper of coconut from sunscreen he'd half rubbed in. He set the board against the wall, turned, and gave her a grin that thought it was charming. "Morning, spreadsheets," he said. "How's the empire?" "My empire is alphabetized," she replied, not looking up. "Yours appears to be damp." "Damp is a lifestyle," he said, unbothered, and headed for the kitchen. He opened the fridge like it was his own and began pulling out ingredients with the assurance of someone who's never been told no in a kitchen: eggs, avocado, a suspiciously perfect mango, a bunch of cilantro that looked like it had been auditioned. He set a pan on the stove, clicked on the flame, and, without any ceremony at all, took off his shirt. Claire did not look. Or, if she did, it was with the clinical detachment of a doctor examining a chart. It was, objectively, a torso. A very well put together torso, yes, but a torso nonetheless, the kind that made personal trainers nod and restaurant bread baskets nervous. A thin silver chain winked against his collarbone. He moved around the kitchen like he knew where everything lived. The pan hissed when the eggs hit. The smell of toast drifted across the room and climbed straight into the part of her brain that kept notes on things she pretended not to want. "You're welcome," he said. "For what?" "For the breakfast you're about to pretend you don't want." "I don't eat breakfast," she lied, typing faster. "Breakfast complicates the schedule." "Interesting," he said, sprinkling chopped herbs like confetti you'd actually be happy to clean up. "I've always found breakfast solves most problems." "Good for you," she said, highlighting 3 cells in yellow and feeling unreasonable triumph. Some of us can't rely on protein and vibes. He laughed, low and real. Protein and vibes, now that's a shirt. That would be his life, she thought. Slogans turn into merchandise, into a brand, into a yacht. Meanwhile, she was out here living on espresso and bullet points. The pan clicked, he plated 2 neat piles of scrambled eggs, sliced avocado fanned like a deck of cards, and mango cubes that looked geometrically smug. He set 1 plate beside her laptop without a word. The eggs sent up a buttery hello. She kept typing, deliberately determined. He sat opposite, forked a bite, and watched her with infuriating patience. Claire, he said after a moment, gentle. Eat. She glanced at the clock. 6:21. The bride wouldn't be awake for another hour. The tent company's foreman had left her on read because his kids' school drop-off started at 7. There was room, technically, for eggs. She picked up the fork with the same size she used when very nice people made very good points. 5 minutes, she said. No more. And if I'm late because of breakfast, I will personally hold the sun in place, he said, dead serious for the length of 1 breath. The joke landed, but so did something else, quieter, the promise underneath it, ridiculous and inexplicably steady. The first bite embarrassed her with how good it was, soft, savory, something green and bright tucked in. She ate without admitting it was a relief. He didn't gloat. Points for that. So he said between bites. What's the crisis of the day? There is no crisis, she said automatically. There are minor adjustments. He smirked. What's the biggest minor adjustment? She considered. The generator. The dessert bar uses more power than anticipated. I need an extra unit by 4, tucked behind the palms, hidden from photos, silent enough that the violinist doesn't glare at me. Take mine, he said. Her fork paused midair. Your generator. I shipped a portable for an event on the north side tomorrow. It's here early, sitting in storage. It's quiet. It's ugly, but I've got skirting in a neutral color if you need to dress it up. She held his gaze, measuring. Offers were easy, follow-through was where most people folded. I need it by 3. It'll be there at 2, he said, as if ordering the tide. Thank you, she said, and meant it. She also filed it in her mental ledger, 1 reliable act, pending confirmation. He leaned back, watching her with that tilted interest he wore like another accessory. You know, for someone who claims to not enjoy weddings, you're very good at making them pretty. I never said I don't enjoy them, she said. I said I don't enjoy them the way guests do. My seat is behind the curtain. That sounds lonely. It's efficient. She took another bite, annoyed to discover she was nearly smiling. And what about you? Besides surfing at an hour that should be illegal and cooking without a shirt. I own shirts, he protested, entirely insincere. What's your schedule? Do you work? He pretended to be wounded. I do. Even CEO surfers send emails. Aha. Meetings later. A site visit. A call with a foundation we support, ocean conservation, youth programs. Paperwork. It's all very glamorous. There it was again, the little undercut of self-awareness that kept him from being unbearable. She noticed it, didn't let herself name it. He stood, gathered plates, and moved to the sink. I'll clean up. You conquer the generator situation. I already conquered it, she said, just to be contrary. Apparently via your overstocked storage. He laughed, and for a second the room felt ridiculous in the best way, like two kids playing house, except the house had a private plunge pool and a view of infinity. By 7, they retreated to their corners. Claire's headset hummed to life, voices poured through, the florist promising to disguise the generator with monstera leaves, the lighting tech asking for an extra dimmer pack, a bridesmaid inquiring whether her boyfriend could sit closer to the dance floor. Claire answered, adjusted, nudged, soothed. She was in her lane. It felt like flying a very small plane through perfect weather. Max took his calls out on the deck, pacing, voice low and focused. Every so often, he'd drift back in to check on her, more coffee. Water, with the casual domesticity of someone used to sharing space. It should have grated. It almost did. And yet, each time he crossed her peripheral vision, something in her unfurled and then snapped back, like a flag in an unpredictable breeze. She ignored it and color-coded the seating chart. Late morning brought the day's first true snag. The rental company mixed up the chair deliveries. 80 white Giovanis instead of 120. Claire's pulse ticked higher. She called, escalated, negotiated. The warehouse manager promised a rush. They could get 40 more by 2. She thanked him in a tone that conveyed both gratitude and the knowledge that she could professionally haunt him if he failed. She hung up, exhaled, and found Max watching her from the kitchen doorway, a half-peeled orange in his hand. "Everything okay?" he asked. "It will be," she said, which was her default end to every sentence that didn't have time for a breakdown. "Chairs. It's fine. Want me to send a few from the beach club?" he offered. "They're not a perfect match, but—" "No," she said quickly. "They have to match." "The photos," she caught herself, softened her tone. "Thank you. I've got it." "Copy that," he said, like he was taking instruction on a boat. "No sulking, no pushback." He bit into the orange, then winced as the juice hit a healing nick on his lip she hadn't noticed before. He dabbed it with his thumb, looked up to find her looking. An awkward moment of being human passed between them. "What?" he asked, amused. "Nothing," she said, cheeks warming at being caught caring. By noon the sun was confident, the lawn a bustle of white shirts and clipboards. Claire headed out to the site with her tape measure and Grace under pressure smile. Max trailed at a distance, chatting with staff, checking his phone, occasionally offering an extra set of hands without turning it into a big deal. She wanted to be irritated. She wasn't. She told herself not to read into the way the vendors perked up when he approached, the way the sous chef upgraded her tasting plate because Mr. Darcy said you're keeping the whole ship afloat. She declined the extra macaron and thanked them anyway. Back at the bungalow in the mid-afternoon heat, the air conditioning felt like a blessing. Claire kicked off her heels for exactly 3 minutes, standing barefoot on cool tile like a kid stealing cookies in a kitchen. She took a sip of water, closed her eyes, counted to 10. When she opened them, Max was standing at the counter assembling something that involved basil and toasted bread. "Snack," he announced. "Doctor's orders." "Are you a doctor now?" she asked, amused despite herself. "I have a degree in making sure people don't topple over," he said, sliding a plate toward her. "Eat, then tell me what victory we're chasing next." She picked up a crostini, took a bite, and decided not to compliment him. It would only encourage his habit of being useful. "Victory," she said, mouth half full, "is the generator arriving early, the chairs arriving on time, the bride not changing her mind about the aisle runner, and the wind staying low so the candles don't misbehave. He saluted with his water glass. Two obedient candles. Their eyes met over the ridiculous toast. The moment held a second longer than it should have. She looked away first, a little annoyed at herself for noticing how the corners of his eyes crinkled when he smiled genuinely. He looked away too, busying himself with the basil. Afternoon shaded into evening. Staff set out glass hurricanes, the string duo tuned under a palm. The sky started its nightly performance, all peaches and violets. Claire checked her watch, her lists, the mirror, hair still in place, lipstick not chipped. She straightened a napkin that didn't really need straightening, the way she always did when her nerves had opinions. "You look like you're about to launch a rocket," Max said from the doorway, soft. "I am," she said. "A very expensive, very emotional rocket." He stepped aside, made a sweeping gesture toward the lawn. Then, "Mission Control, take your place." She walked past him, catching a low hit of his cologne, salt, cedar, something she would not later describe to herself as addictive. Outside, the guests began to arrive in tasteful fabrics, sandals clicking, voices excited. Claire took her spot just off stage, headset live, posture composed. From the deck, Max watched her run the room with invisible threads, the conductor behind the curtain she'd claimed. His expression held that teasing curve at the mouth, yes, but there was something else now, deeper in the set of his shoulders, a focus that wasn't about waves or brands. He was curious. She hated that she could feel it like heat at her back. She hated, just as much, that a small, treacherous part of her was curious too. When the first toast went up and the violin slid into something warm and familiar, Claire allowed herself exactly one glance toward the bungalow. He was there, leaning on the rail, shirt back on, silhouette cut against a sky that made promises. He raised his glass in a silent cheers in her direction, nothing grand, no flourish. Just a gesture that acknowledged the day she'd wrangled into beauty. She rolled her eyes for show and lifted her clipboard in response, as if to say, "I did this, and I don't need your applause." But when she turned away, the corner of her mouth betrayed her. Not a smile, exactly. More like the preview of one, scheduled for a later date if conditions allowed. Behind her headset's hum and the music's swell, the island kept breathing, steady, patient, as if it already knew that two people who insisted on being opposites had, in fact, begun to take each other's measure, and that, in its own quiet way, was the day's most interesting development. Chapter 4, Trouble in Paradise. It began with a sound, faint, distant, the kind of low rumble that doesn't belong in a place built for calm. At first, Claire thought it was just another generator starting up on the other side of the resort. Then, as she crossed the patio with her tablet tucked under one arm, the horizon blinked. A thin, silvery curtain appeared far out over the ocean, rain, moving fast. She stopped mid-step. "No," she whispered, as if the island might listen. But the curtain thickened. It began to swallow the sunlight. By late afternoon, the resort was no longer a dream postcard. Clouds rolled in like slow bruises. The air went heavy, the kind that sticks to your skin and makes your hair revolt. Claire stood under the terrace awning, headset pressed to one ear, watching staff hurry to cover the sound equipment. Umbrellas bloomed in frantic unison. The breeze turned playful, then mean. Max appeared out of nowhere, barefoot again. Why was he always barefoot? Carrying two folded lounge cushions and a grin that said "I told you so." "Storm's coming," he said, matter of fact, as thunder gave a lazy warning overhead. She shot him a look. I noticed. Relax, he said, as if she were overreacting. It'll blow over in an hour. Happens all the time here. She wanted to believe him, but the sky said otherwise. It was bruising faster now, purple deepening to grey, grey darkening to something that meant business. The bride, meanwhile, had started to panic. Her text messages came through like distress flares. Will it rain on the ceremony? What about the beach photos? Please tell me you have a plan B. Claire did have a plan B. In fact, she had a plan C and a plan D. But her hands still trembled slightly as she typed back, all under control. Go relax with your bridesmaids. I'll handle everything. She hung up her headset and scanned the sky again. Lightning flickered in the distance, beautiful, dangerous, untimely. Max leaned against a post, crossing his arms. You're not going to stop it by staring at it, you know. She glared. I'm recalculating the setup for tomorrow's ceremony. He squinted at her tablet. You have contingency plans for weather. Of course I do. Color-coded. Obviously. He chuckled, low. Of course they are. Before she could reply, a gust of wind barreled through, knocking over a vase full of orchids. Reflex took over. Claire darted forward and caught it mid-fall, but the water splashed across her blouse, leaving a wet mark that spread like ink. Max tried not to laugh. He failed. You okay, superwoman? She gave him a look sharp enough to cut coral. Do not test me right now. Another flash, closer this time. The thunder came faster. The staff scrambled to haul everything inside. Claire directed the movement like a drill sergeant, hands waving, voice firm, headset crackling with overlapping voices. Tables disappeared under tarps. Lanterns came down. Flowers were rescued one by one. Max jumped in without waiting for instructions, carrying folded chairs two at a time, sleeves rolled up, hair plastered to his forehead. He was irritatingly efficient. And he didn't stop smiling. At one point, as she bent to grab a crate, a hand appeared beside hers, his. Their fingers brushed, only for a second, slick with rain and adrenaline. They both froze, just long enough to notice. Then she pulled away fast, as if burned. I've got it, she muttered. Didn't say you didn't, he said, but his grin softened. Within 20 minutes, the pristine lawn was a battlefield of puddles and palm fronds. The sky cracked open and dumped everything it had. The rain hit the roof like applause. Guests ran for cover, shrieking and laughing. Staff huddled under the eaves, soaked and breathless. Max glanced toward the hills beyond the resort. That's bad news, he said, his tone changing. When it rains this hard, the roads flood. She turned to him. Flood? Yeah. The North Road goes first. You'll be lucky if anyone gets out tonight. Her stomach dropped. I have vendors coming in from Lahaina tomorrow morning. Not anymore, he said gently. The words landed like a hammer. Claire's mind spun, backup deliveries, alternate drivers, delayed shipments. Every contingency she'd ever planned suddenly seemed too small. Thunder boomed again, so loud the ground trembled. Somewhere in the distance, the lights flickered. Oh, you've got to be kidding me, she breathed. Generator will kick in, Max said. Eventually. Eventually. And right on cue, darkness. The bungalow went black. The air conditioning died with a sigh. For a few seconds, the only light came from the storm outside, quick, silver flashes that illuminated the room in snapshots, Max's calm profile, her drenched clothes, the storm's fury beyond the glass. Then, nothing. They stood there, breathing in the dark, listening to the rain hammer down. "Well," he said finally, voice easy, teasing. "Guess it's just us, paradise, and no Wi-Fi." She let out a small, incredulous laugh, the kind that bubbles up when you're too tired to argue. "You find this funny?" "A little," he admitted. "You're vibrating like someone unplugged your charger." "I have an entire wedding depending on me tomorrow." "Then maybe the universe is telling you to take 5 minutes off." "Max." He turned toward her voice. "Claire, there's nothing you can do right now. The island's shut down. The roads are rivers, the lights are out, and..." A flash of lightning cut him off. The sky turned white for half a heartbeat. She saw his face, calm, unshaken, faintly amused, and felt the strangest thing, not irritation, not panic. Relief. Because he was right. For once, she couldn't fix this. She sank into the couch, shoes still on, head in her hands. "This is a disaster." "It's just weather," he said, settling opposite her. "The island likes to keep people humble." "I'm not here to be humbled," she said into her palms. "I'm here to deliver perfection." "Perfection's overrated," he said softly. "Trust me, I tried it for years. It's exhausting." She looked up at him. "You? Exhausted by success?" He shrugged, the motion barely visible in the storm light. "The higher you climb, the less the view matters. You start wanting silence instead." That silenced her. The storm roared louder. The walls shivered. But inside, something gentler was happening, a truce, unspoken but undeniable. Max stood, rummaged in a drawer, and came back with 2 candles and a lighter. He lit them both, their flames small but stubborn. The light softened everything, the edges of the furniture, the tension in her shoulders, even the expression on his face. "There," he said, setting one on the coffee table. "Emergency lighting, courtesy of the Darcy survival kit." She smiled despite herself. "You really carry candles?" "I own a surf company, not a cave," he said. "And anyway, it's not my first blackout." She leaned back, watching the flicker play across the ceiling. The sound of rain blurred into white noise. The air smelled of wax and salt and something faintly sweet, his shampoo, maybe, or the candle itself. For the first time in days, she wasn't multitasking, wasn't problem-solving. Just sitting. He looked over at her. "So, what does the control queen do when the world stops cooperating?" She met his eyes. "Usually. Rewrites the rules." He smiled. "You might have to settle for breaking them tonight." For a long moment, they said nothing. Outside, lightning lit the sky again, but the thunder came slower, fading. The storm was starting to lose its temper. Claire closed her eyes, exhausted but oddly calm. "How long do you think we'll be stuck here?" He tilted his head, listening to the rain ease up. "Hard to say. Maybe a day. Maybe 2. Maybe 7. Her eyes opened, sharp. 7 days. He smiled. Could be worse places to be stranded. And somehow, the word stranded didn't sound terrible in his voice. It sounded like the beginning of something she hadn't planned for, and maybe, for once, that was exactly what she needed. Outside, the storm kept whispering secrets to the sea. Inside, 2 candles burned steady, and somewhere between thunder and silence, paradise began to change its meaning. Chapter 5, The First Crack. When morning came, the island was unrecognizable. The storm had spent itself during the night, leaving behind a bruised calm, still air, mist hanging low, palm fronds bent and glistening. The ocean, usually so bold, looked pale and worn out. Its rhythm had slowed, as if it too needed a nap. Inside Bungalow 12, the aftermath felt strangely intimate. The power was still out, the air conditioner silent. The only sounds were the ocean's faint sigh and the clink of cutlery. Claire sat at the small dining table, barefoot, hair pinned messily, spooning cereal out of a mug because the bowls were in the dishwasher, and the dishwasher, of course, was dead. Across from her, Max sat in board shorts and a white t-shirt that clung slightly to his shoulders, eating half a papaya with a fork. He looked frustratingly rested. She had dark circles. "How do you look like that after a night like that?" she asked without thinking. "Like what?" he said, grinning. "Like someone who got 8 hours of sleep in a luxury spa." "I sleep anywhere," he said with a shrug. "You don't?" "I don't sleep during natural disasters." He chuckled. "That's fair." Claire stirred her cereal and stared out the window. The lawn beyond the bungalow was a patchwork of puddles. The resort staff moved in slow, deliberate lines, collecting fallen branches, testing equipment. The entire island seemed to be holding its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Her phone was useless, no service, no Wi-Fi. Her laptop had a full battery but nothing to connect to. For a woman who lived on email threads and color-coded schedules, it was a form of sensory deprivation. "What's the damage?" Max asked, following her gaze. "Everything's delayed," she said. "Deliveries can't get through. Half the vendors are stuck in Lahaina. The generator probably flooded. And I have a bride who wants a beachfront ceremony tomorrow." "Optimistic bride," he said. "She's also famous," Claire replied, taking a sip of water. "Which means the press will be circling the second the roads reopen. If this wedding fails, I don't just lose a paycheck. I lose my reputation." He leaned back, studying her with that calm, maddening ease of his. "You always talk like everything's a deal you have to close." "Because it is," she said. "That's the job." "Sounds exhausting." "It is," she said before she could stop herself. The honesty slipped out, raw and quiet. Max didn't gloat. He just nodded and took another bite of papaya. "Then maybe today's your chance to stop." "I can't stop," she said, sharper now. "I don't stop. That's how I got here." He tilted his head. "Here as in Maui, or here as in, this version of you?" She looked at him. "You really don't pull your punches, do you?" He smiled faintly. "You started it." The room felt warmer than it should. The air held a charge, faint but unmistakable. She stood abruptly, gathering the dishes. "I need to check with the resort manager. Maybe they've restored part of the grid." "They haven't," he said. "I asked." "You've been awake that long?" "Since sunrise." "Of course you have." She moved toward the sink but paused at the window. Outside, the ocean shimmered faintly under a veil of light mist. It was the kind of morning that wanted to be forgiven. "Come on," Max said suddenly, standing. "For what?" "For air. You've been pacing holes in the floor since 6. I have work. You have fog. It'll wait 5 minutes." Before she could object, he grabbed 2 mugs, one with lukewarm coffee, one with nothing in it, and pushed open the sliding doors. The sound that rushed in was enormous and soothing all at once. Waves rolling, birds reclaiming the trees, the faint crackle of palm fronds drying in the sun. Claire hesitated, then followed. The wooden deck was still damp under her feet. The air smelled of salt and wet soil. She looked out at the water, calm now, deceptively innocent, and felt the tension in her chest loosen, just slightly. "See," he said softly. "Not everything needs a spreadsheet." She didn't answer. Instead, she closed her eyes and listened. For the first time since the storm began, she let the quiet happen. When she opened them again, Max was watching her. Not staring, just observing, like he was trying to memorize the version of her that wasn't performing for anyone. "What?" she said, wary. "Nothing. Just proof of life." She snorted. "You're impossible." "Not impossible," he said, smiling. "Just patient." She shook her head and turned away, but her lips betrayed her with the faintest smile. An hour later, they were walking along the beach, shoes abandoned. The sand was dark and cool beneath their feet. The resort was still half asleep behind them. A few guests wandered the paths, clutching coffee, filming the wreckage of palm leaves for social media. Claire carried her phone, out of habit, though she knew it was useless. Max carried a piece of driftwood, turning it idly in his hands like a puzzle. "Do you ever not work?" he asked. "I'm walking, aren't I?" "You're still thinking about the wedding." "Of course I am." He smiled. "You're like a laptop that refuses to shut down." She raised an eyebrow. "And you're like a toddler who thinks life's one big nap." He laughed. "Tush." They walked a bit further in companionable silence. The beach curved ahead, the mist slowly lifting. The ocean was still cloudy from the storm, waves folding over themselves in lazy spirals. Then Max pointed toward the shallows. "See that?" Claire followed his gaze. A green sea turtle, big as a backpack, was gliding close to shore, riding the foam like royalty. Her mouth fell open. "It's beautiful." "Yeah," he said. "They always come out after a storm. Guess they like the calm, too." She crouched instinctively, the planner in her temporarily disarmed by the sight. The turtle lifted its head once, blinked, and vanished beneath the waves. When she straightened, Max was watching her again, that same unreadable expression. "What?" she said, but her tone was softer this time. "Nothing," he said again. "Just nice to see you look human." "Excuse me." He laughed. "You know what I mean. Less corporate goddess, more person." "Do you ever stop talking?" "Nope," he said. "You'd miss it if I did." "I doubt it." But the smile she gave him this time was real. By midday, the sun finally broke through. The resort began to hum back to life, maintenance crews checking circuits, guests emerging from their rooms. The air felt lighter, full of that post-storm optimism that makes everyone momentarily polite. Claire sat cross-legged on the couch, laptop on her knees, typing furiously. Max was stretched out on the opposite end, barefoot and reading something on his phone. Every now and then, he'd glance at her and grin. "Still saving the world one email at a time," he teased. "Trying to," she said. "But until the Wi-Fi's back, I'm just talking to myself." He laughed. "Then talk to me instead." "About what?" "Anything. You can't possibly enjoy this much silence." "Actually," she said, looking up from the screen. I do. He mock gasped. You enjoy silence? I thought you lived on the sound of incoming messages. I live on results, she said. Silence means I have to think. And that's bad. It's unfamiliar. Something in the way she said it made him sit up. You ever let yourself not think? I'm not sure I remember how. He studied her, the teasing gone from his voice. You should learn. Maybe, she said, turning back to the laptop. But her typing slowed, just a fraction. Outside, the waves sparkled like they were in on a secret. That evening, as the sun dropped low and painted the sky in bruised gold, the power finally flickered back on. Lights came alive across the resort, one by one, like cautious fireflies. Claire exhaled, relief loosening every muscle. Finally. Or Max said, stretching. I was starting to like the candlelight vibe. You would. You didn't. She hesitated, then smiled. It was fine. He grinned, satisfied. Progress. The air between them shifted, not electric, not dramatic, just different. Softer. The kind of quiet that feels like trust beginning to take shape. He leaned against the doorway, hands in pockets, hair tousled from the wind. You know, for someone who said she hated being stranded, you're doing pretty well. Don't push it, she said, but the laughter in her voice gave her away. He lifted his cup toward her in a mock toast. To surviving paradise. She lifted hers back. Barely. Their eyes met over the rim of their mugs. It lasted a heartbeat too long. Then the power surged again, lights brightening. The moment broke. Claire turned away quickly, pretending to busy herself with her laptop. But her pulse had changed tempo, not from panic this time, but from something she didn't want to name. Because she knew exactly what had just happened. The first crack. Small, unexpected, but impossible to ignore. The kind that doesn't ruin the foundation, it just lets the light in.
Thanks for listening to Billionaire Romance Stories, where love meets luxury in the most unexpected places. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to like, subscribe, and drop a comment. We love hearing your favorite twists and favorite theories. And don't forget to ring that bell, because in this world of yachts, secrets, and luxurious romance, the next story is always one click away.